Hi, everyone. Welcome to Foresight's Shadow's Career Counseling. We're really excited to have Danielle Strachman here today. It's not the first time that you're joining a Foresight venue, virtual or in person, and our community is a very big fan of yours. Before we ask you a few questions, I want to hear briefly from our fellows. Should we just go popcorn style, keep it brief, but maybe say your name, an affiliation if you want to, and one goal that you have in your career so that we can set the stage a little bit for the Q&A afterwards. So perhaps Alex Gilbert, do you want to start? Name, affiliation, and a goal.
Sure. Hello, Danielle. Thanks so much for joining. Alex Gilbert. I'm with Xeno Power and Colorado School of Mines. I focus on advanced space and nuclear technologies. And really, my big goal right now is finishing up my PhD, but then trying to figure out how to leverage that in order to have a broader social benefit.
Love it. Next one up, we have Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Danielle. I'm Amanda. I am early stages of starting something, and my goal is to create something that helps people heal.
Short and sweet. Love it. Bogdan, you're next.
Actually trying to, apparently my camera is covered. I'm not sure exactly how, but yeah, I'm an independent AI safety researcher. And my goal is to try to make automated AI safety R&D go well and the AI, powerful AI go well more broadly.
Thanks. Next one up, we have Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris, and so my background, I'm a PhD in molecular nanotechnology, DNA nanotechnology, and I'm really interested in how that sort of work could apply to sustainability and climate. And I'm really interested in how different mechanisms for supporting emerging tech in that space, like venture capital, how that world thinks about that space.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. Emanuele.
Hello, I'm Emanuele. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Northwestern University in physical chemistry. I would say my main short-term goal is securing an independent position starting from this fall.
Awesome. Next one up, we have Matteo.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you for chatting with us. I'm Matteo. I'm a PhD candidate at Caltech. I also work in DNA nanotech like Chris, but I'm interested in using that for biomanufacturing and that sort of environment. And I'm looking both into sort of venture capital, early startups, that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Super. Michael Floria.
I am building a robotic animal lab right now as a new company, but my long-term goal is to give mankind full control over its genetics to feed longevity and keep us healthy for longer.
Awesome. Nicolo.
Hi, I'm Nicolo. Thank you very much for chatting with us today. I am affiliated with OpenBioML, and my goal is to contribute to a world where AIs can flourish on their own terms while also allowing us to flourish ourselves.
Hey, I'm Olu. Danielle, long time no see, huh? We're using large robotics to help 3D print and autonomously assemble entire products with very little human intervention. Long-term vision is to be able to not just do this on Earth, but eventually in space. We're interested in learning how to best leverage venture money to hit the moonshot, so to speak. Thanks for your time.
Oh, so you guys meet again, huh? Next up, we have Roman.
Everyone, and hello, Danielle. So I'm Roman Bauer. I'm an assistant professor in the UK at the University of Surrey, and I'm also co-founder of Oxford Cryotech, where we do cryopreservation research. And ultimately, I aim for two things. One is to improve brain simulations to better understand the brain, especially in aging. And then the other thing is to do cryonics research. So any support along this direction would be appreciated.
Samuel? Or Samuel?
I can unmute, but hi, I'm Sam. Thank you, Danielle, for the chat. And I'm affiliated with the Domnus Institute here in Nijmegen. It's like a brain institute. I study AI, and my research focus is on agency and controllability in natural agents. And I guess my goal is moving more into a technical builder role, maybe outside of academia. Thank you.
Awesome. And we have two more to go. One is Shruti.
Hello, I'm Shruti. I got a PhD in bioengineering, and now I work at Retro Biosciences, and my goal is to help extend healthy human lifespan.
Zan.
Hi, I'm Michigan and I do neuro AI research. So using principles and concepts from neuroscience to build the future of AIs and cutting edge models. And I'm interested in potentially starting a long-term project, building a candidate for something like AGI, but that's scalable and very reasonable.
For AI, I like that. Okay, awesome. Well, now you have a little bit of an idea of who you're meeting today, Danielle. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think I already mentioned you were a few times in a few Foresight venues, but we would really love to hear from you. Perhaps maybe starting with your really, I think, unique and really interesting origin story of, how you came into your role at 1517 right now, because I think you've really seen a lot in the Bay, especially in terms of different founders and different projects coming through. And it would be really interesting to hear just like what prompted you to start 1517 and how did you get there from your various previous endeavors?
Sure, great. Yeah, really happy to be here and even more happy to see familiar faces. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know these people. So that's always fun. The quick background is that I've been in alternative education in some form for 20 years. At one point early in my career, this looked like working with homeschoolers, and I had a private tutoring company. And I started working with homeschoolers randomly. This is in the days before Craigslist was creepy. And I was A/B testing ads and stuff like that. And one hit upon homeschooling families. And I just loved working with them. And they really solidified my own personal mission. And I love how Michael on the call opened up with sort of his mission for what he wants to do, because that's what guides me in my work, which is to bring freedom, agency, and autonomy to young people. What's been funny over the course of my career is my definition of a young person continues to shift upwards. I'm like, interesting. Someday when I'm like in my, 60s or 70s, I'll be like, those 40-year-olds really need, whatever. But yeah, I ended up starting a charter school based on homeschooling principles. And so I think a theme you'll see is that these sort of principles of, as radical as it is, treating young people like human beings, with agency and feelings and thoughts and, things like that is a theme throughout. But I ended up starting a charter school. That's Innovations Academy in San Diego. That's been going for almost 17 years now. I have a board meeting tonight. I'm still involved with the school. I ran it for the first 2 years and founded it for the first 2. So it was very solidified there for 4 years. I ended up moving up to the Bay. Gosh, what year are we in? Okay, yeah, it's been 14 years. And in fact, one of the first persons that I sat down with when I moved to the Bay Area was Chris Peterson, one of the founders of the Foresight Institute. She's been a friend and a mentor for a long time. And she sat me down and there's all kinds of exciting stuff going on here and exciting personalities and exciting both in positive and negative ways. And here's low down. And I said, wow, thanks, Chris. This is a good primer to the Bay Area. But I didn't know exactly what I was going to be doing. But I did know that I wanted it to be aligned with that personal mission that I mentioned earlier. And I told myself when I first moved here that I'd take a staycation, this idea that you're not working and you're staying put. But that was a scary time for me because I didn't know exactly what my work would be. I was burning through savings, which I had never done before. I was like, oh gosh, you don't do that. That's not responsible. Or the reasonable AI thing to do. But I ended up, just knowing, okay, what I want to do is work with young people in some format. I want to keep continuing the ethos of homeschooling philosophy. And then one day, 3 months into my 6-month staycation, I got a call from someone at the Thiel Foundation, this woman, Lindy Fishburne, whose exact words to me were, the foundation has lost their minds. They're starting this new program. They have nobody running it. You have to get over here. And I was like, as a charter school leader and as an operator, I was like, and I had seen the TechCrunch interview the day before. And I was like, and Peter sounds like this has been brewing for 6 months or something like that. And it's all set up. So in my operator brain, I was like, who on earth launches a program doesn't have a staff running it and a pilot and all this stuff? Okay, it's Peter. And to his credit, he'd been thinking about education for a long time, but he just decided that TechCrunch Disrupt was the time to, put this new program out, which at first was called 20 Under 20, and now it's called the Thiel Fellowship. So to make a long story short, my colleague Michael and I were on the founding team of that program for the first 5 years. We worked with some really amazing people before anyone else knew who they were. That was the ethos of the program at the time, was to back people before they were, understood or discovered or had made their contribution. And the idea was we'd give them a $100,000 grant, mentorship, and opportunity. And honestly, really the biggest thing was the permission to be able to do something outside the institution and work on the things that were important to them. This was 14 years ago. This was a extremely radical position to take. People hated us for what we were doing. It's been really interesting to watch the tide turn. And now the conversation of, should a young person go to college is a totally normal conversation for your normal, typical, everyday family to have. This was not the case when we first started the program. But we got to work with people like Dylan Field with Figma, before he was who everybody knows he is today. People like Vitalik with Ethereum, people like Laura Deming with the Longevity Fund, people like Ritesh with the Wayo Rooms. What we saw was that a lot of the investment community didn't take our program seriously and therefore didn't take the young people we were working with seriously. 9 years ago, Michael and I said, if investors aren't going to take the people we work with seriously, maybe we just become investors. The nice thing about founding something is that you just get to call yourself that thing. Although it's fun, even for the first couple of years, I did not use the investor title. I was like, oh gosh, I don't even like this title. I just tell people I worked with founders and stuff like that. But we started 15, 17 very much to scale our work. We're working with people who are outside tracked institutions, or who are renegade scientists who are breaking out of academia. And we write very early stage checks into individuals and teams. We have a grant program, and then we have our investment program. And people like Chris Olah too. Chris is actually one of my favorite fellowship stories. He came in as like an additive manufacturing, 3D printing, math geek. And I love him to death. And he really used his fellowship time as a time to explore. And he started exploring ML and AI and got really deep in that space and started doing lots of writing, and today he's one of the founders of Anthropic. So it's been, that arc is particularly interesting. We've been talking about it on the team because he started out more in that academic mindset and over a very long arc is now in the founder entrepreneur archetype as well, or is taking that on in addition. Yeah, that's been a really interesting one for us. But yeah, that got us started almost 10 years ago with 1517. And I'll pause there. I told you guys I'm a talker, so I'm trying to keep things short. It's hard.
Love it. Yeah, I have so many follow-up questions, but does anyone else have a question, a comment, anything you'd like to ask Danielle at this point already?
What do you do now?
So right now, still founder and general partner, 1517 Fund. That's the thing I spend the most time on. And I have it's interesting. Allison actually gave me a platform to do some thinking. She had invited me to the Foresight Vision Weekend a couple years ago, which was so fabulous. I raved to everybody about it. And she's, I'm not paid to say this or anything like that. She doesn't have me here because I'm always like, it's amazing. It's the best thing ever. But it is. But she had invited me to speak. And I was like, what do I want to talk about? And the thing that has become really important to me in the last couple of years is this idea of direct patronage, of can you work with people and offer them opportunities to further something? Because I think as a society, there's this long-standing meme that you can't trust individuals and what they're doing, but you can trust institutions. You can trust that nonprofit that you give money to, or the symphony or wherever. But you can't just say, hey, this person is really great and I'm going to support them. Now, in the arts, this has been a long-standing tradition. But usually even those patrons are considered these eccentric, wackadoodle people. But I aspire to be that wackadoodle person. I think I'm moving in the right direction. And I have a lot of thoughts around patronage that I want to keep exploring, both through 1517, but I also have some experiments I want to do on the art side as well to see if some of what we've done at 1517 on like the maker founder side can apply to young people who are in the arts who are doing it, again, outside of institutions and things like that. So eventually I'll be doing some, a side project there That'll be my side hustle.
What kind of art when you say art?
I love painters. That's my particular jam. Basically, I want to drive all over the Bay Area and just meet up with a bunch of, 16 through 25-year-old painters. And I've already done, actually, that piece of art right there is done by somebody who's 20, who I met a couple of years ago in the Bay. And like, her and her boyfriend are incredible painters. And yeah, I just want to, like, for 2 weeks, drive all over the Bay, meet a bunch of artists, give them small grants of maybe $1,000 and do a showcase, with maybe 10 or 15 of them and see what happens. Because what we've seen, and this comes back to some of the deep tech side that I know you all are interested in, is that a very small amount of capital sometimes really catalyzes things in a big way. We used to call our grant program a nudge. We're like, oh, it's a nudge. We're just getting people started. We're like rolling the pebble down the hill and seeing what happens. And that's been interesting for us. We've had a number of companies that have started as grantees with us. One of them is DeepGram, their Series C company now. And we've also had a number of deep tech companies start, not necessarily as grantees, but we started them with a small investment check, sometimes 50 or 100K. And actually, a team member of one of them is on the call, which is Power. And so we started them with something small, and they're becoming a larger company now. And so it's been really neat to see that. So this idea of direct patronage and how do you get somebody started? How do you get that pebble rolling down the hill, that momentum, and then with additional capital over time, keep growing that, into a boulder? Or what's that? I don't remember that game. There's that game, I think it's like Katamari, where there's that big ball that rolls around and like collects resources. I don't know if anyone ever played that, but it's a fun one.
You're like the catalyst of that avalanche.
That's right. Something. No, I'm like, it's either a good thing or a bad thing. And that's the thing about investing is we don't know. It's, some of the technologies that we're investing in, it's okay, this could be used for good. It could be used for not so good. Like, and it brings up large philosophical questions for us at 15, 17 that actually we still grapple with sometimes as well. But hopefully for the most part, like we do think about our investment monies being like one of our questions on our diligence checklist is, will this make a positive dent in the universe? That's something that we very much want.
And if you just think a little bit about perhaps like either some of the Medici grantees that you guys had or some of the investments that you guys made, are there specific like positive traits? So if someone, for example, on the call is thinking about founding something or has already founded something or is thinking about spinning out, are there specific positive traits where you're like, oh, if we see people like that or a project like this, we usually get excited. And the other way around, is there anything like any red flags that people should be watching out for as they're possibly starting a new project?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind that are tied in with each other. One is that we are mostly company or scientific space agnostic. People ask us all the time if we have these futuristic theories about where things will be in 20 or 50 years. And we think about that stuff, but we're not the type of fund to say, we believe the future is going in this direction. For us, it's more we're collecting people who have that vision of what the future looks like and then giving them resources. And so for us, one of the ways that comes out is talking to people about what we call their sustaining motivation. It's like, why is this person literally willing to bet a large portion of their future on what they're doing? And because we often work with people very early in their career, over time, what we've noticed is that, sometimes when someone is like far into their company, or even potentially finished with their company, they have spent literally a third of their life on it. And that third is usually the first significant portion of their adult life. So it has to be like, wow, why are you going to take all that early career time to put into this? That is a big piece of it. But one of the things that we look for in that sustaining motivation is also this passion of, is this person eating, drinking, breathing, dreaming this arena that they're in? And we call this hyperfluency. It's this ability to talk backwards and forward ad nauseum about that space in that really excited way. Like when that excitement certainly gets us excited. There's that emotional resonance of, wow, this person is really going for it. But there's a secondary trait to this that we look for, which is the ability to scaffold one's language. So I used to be a teacher. And so, of course, I love great teachers. So a founder who can take a very difficult topic and make it applicable for someone not in that space, we find that to be a very good attribute of a good founder. And maybe we're biased, I'm certainly biased, but you're building a team. And some of those team members are going to have more expertise than you. Some of them are going to be at the same level on a topic. Some people are going to be there as operators in the company and doing different things that don't have to do with the technical piece of the business. And you want to be able to wrap everybody into what you're doing. So that means you have to talk at different levels. So oftentimes founders come in to chat with us or, over a Zoom call or in person sometimes. We're like, hey, talk to us like we're the dumbest golden retrievers you have ever met and bring it down to real brass tacks of how does this work? And founders always laugh when we say this, but we really mean it. Or sometimes I'll tell a founder, talk to me like I'm 5, bring this way, way down. I love this ChatGPT golden retriever mode. We use that in the future. Now, an anti-trait that's sort of correlated to this is what we call the cloud of abstractions. I think we've all probably been in the position of going to a conference or something like that, and someone is talking so high level about something that you're like, okay, I'm trying to keep up. I'm not sure exactly what this person's talking about. And when you try to ask them specific questions about what they're doing, they keep bringing it up to this big abstract layer. We call this the cloud of abstractions. We don't find that to be a good thing. It's, in my mind, if I were like a cartoon, the word bubble that would be coming out would be word smart. It's okay, the person's trying to signal that they know a lot of stuff. But try to look at, sort of what's going on. It's like a cloud. There's not a whole lot of substance in there. Where it's like, what are you doing on Friday to get this done? And all of a sudden they're like up in the stratosphere again. So that is a trait that we see as a negative. So we really need to see people who have this big vision, and maybe in a really deep technical space, but can also talk about what are you doing on Friday to get this done and can tell you, okay, I don't know. I've got duct tape. I have tin foil. I'm wrapping it around these things. Here's what we're doing. And you're like, okay. Got it. You're actually executing on something. So that's a really important piece to us. And I think it's one of these things where it's wild, but, on our team, none of us are deep tech people. None of us have been engineers. But what I think we do have is a good bullshit detector. We've gotten to work with some of the best, and we've also gotten to see a lot of bullshit. And so it helps us a lot to be able to say, okay, there's substance here. They're there. And back to that sort of patronage model, let's put in an amount of money that we think would help someone get to the next steps and also help us get validation on, that putting in even more capital would be a good decision moving forward.
Oh, that's really useful. That's the cloud of abstraction. I'm going to use that now. Yeah. Get out of the cloud of abstraction. Yeah. Come down to earth.
And it's interesting because I know I at least grew up with this sort of thought that if you asked questions to somebody and didn't just smile and nod, that it meant you were dumb or something like that. But over time, what I've seen in my career is like the smartest people I know ask them the most questions and are really unafraid to say, hey, you know what? I'm not following you. Can you make an analogy for me? Or can you do this? And I remember when I was in my 20s and I would see some of the smartest people I know doing that, it was this huge light bulb that went off of, whoa, okay, you can disclose that you don't know something. And you can also find out if this person is actually good at explaining it or if they're just like up in the stratosphere. It's been a really interesting trait and thing to develop over time.
Yeah, they probably don't really feel the need that they have to signal that much anymore.
No.
Okay, we have a bunch of questions lined up. We have Nicolo, Roman, Michael, and Olu. Nicolo, kick us off.
Thank you in the meantime for all the very interesting discussion. You mentioned earlier about thinking about the consequences of the peculiar technologies and such. I was wondering whether you could expand on that in terms of the programs and investment that you make, and in particular with regard to whether you incorporate differential technology development and such as part of your strategy.
Sure. Yes, both with our Medici grant and with what we call the Invisible College, which is our 100K R&D check. Those are places where we can really offer people what I sometimes call Hail Mary money of, okay, we're going to see what happens because we don't know where this is going to go or what this, field is going to yield or where the research is going to come out. So those two, and the Medici grant is $1,000. So that's a very small grant. We typically give those to high schoolers, sometimes people who are like, early students, to say, hey, here's $1,000 to get going. And that comes along with some mentorship and, work with 15, 17 as well. But where the real R&D on kicking something off comes in with that invisible college check. That is an investment that's not a grant. And that is that sandbox for people to experiment and see, hey, what can I do? And what we're looking for there is, can some scientific milestones be reached? That's number one. And two is often, can they start applying for non-dilutive funding? There's this marriage between venture capital and non-dilutive funding that happens in deep tech that's really important. I remember we had a team that was working on an incinerator. It was super interesting, really enjoyed the team. And when we asked them, what non-dilutive funding are you going to go after? Very quickly, one of the team members was like, oh, we're not, it takes too long. And I was like, wrong answer. That you're going to miss out on a lot of dollars that are going to help. And in I think the investment category, especially for early stage funders, they look at, hey, has this person, applied for or received a SIBR? Even things like the I-Corps program, where they have you do a lot of customer discovery, we see that as a really good thing. So those types of monies are there to help people sort of kick off. And I think there was a second part of your question that I've now lost. If you want to...
differential technology development. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, we love anything that's really unique. When people come to us and say, hey, nobody is doing sort of research or development in this particular area, that's where we get really excited. At the same time, we are in venture, which means that we have a 10-year timeline that we have to meet for our investors to be able to say, hey, this is really going somewhere. We've returned capital to you and so on. So it's, we have some of this expansiveness in how we do things at 15, 17. And at the same time, we are on, in the grand scheme of the universe, a short timeline as well. So we have to think, could this potentially be something that could become commercializable, within really a handful of years period? Yes, we are very happy to back, really unique stuff. 7 years ago, we backed a quantum computing company called Atom Computing. We're like, okay, this team checks all our, check boxes, and it's going to be a really long game. And actually, what we're learning too is we made that investment in year 3 of our first fund, which means that the timeline is even shorter. At the beginning of a fund, you've got the whole 10 years. At the end of the fund, you're like, okay, we've got 7 more years left. So we're starting to go into the learnings as a venture capital firm of, okay, we have a couple extensions we can do on that timeline. But what happens when we come to the end of that timeline? I think our investors are particularly patient, so we can probably amend and do some more extensions and be like, hey, we've got some really exciting stuff, but it's going to take a little bit longer. Let's see what we can do. But that's how we get started with those types of teams.
Good. Okay, we have Roman next.
Yes, so many thanks for this very informative session. I had a question regarding geographical location. Do you support, and to what extent maybe your portfolio includes people or organizations outside of the US, like in Europe or so? Do you have any, what are your thoughts, and what are the regulations or requirements for this?
So on the investment side, we can only invest in predominantly Delaware C Corps. US entities are certainly the very preferred mechanism. And most often we do invest in North America. We've done a couple, more global investments. We have one team in Mexico City. We have another team in the Philippines, but it is very few and far between. Part of that is just that we're a team of 6 people. And we also don't claim to have any special knowledge about being within other markets either. So especially with our teams that are more global, I always tell them the bar is much higher to make that investment. And then I call it VC advanced tutoring, but we're not tutoring anyone. You're tutoring us all day long. So they have to tutor us on the markets. Okay, we have a company that's working in mortgages in Mexico City. I'm like, all right, I don't know anything about how real estate or mortgages work in Mexico. Let's get as much of an education as we can alongside that founder. So we are certainly happy to talk to people who are in different places, but the bar tends to be much higher just because of our naivete of different markets.
Thank you. Michael, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I was just wondering, what do you guys evaluate emotional intelligence? How do you do that? How important is that, considering that even among, Thiel fellows, I know definitely people who are very intelligent, not in that sense.
Sure.
And among great founders.
Yeah, that's actually something that we look for quite a bit, because you have to be someone who has both like the technical intelligence to build, but also the social intelligence to build a team. That was one of our learnings being at the Thiel Foundation. We worked with people who were very good at both sides of that. We worked with people who were not good at building teams or working with other people, and was, the lone engineer, the like lone scientist. And what we learned is like to build something like of substance, you really need to be able to work with other people. So that's something that definitely comes into play. We often like to see people come in with a co-founder in part for that reason. It's a bit of validation of, okay, can you work with other people? Can you engage somebody else in this mission of what you're doing? We do look at solo founder teams also, especially for those very early stage grants and the R&D check. And one of the things we encourage people to do if they want further funding is, okay, you really need to start building a team. And some of that social intelligence also just comes through, how is this person driving the investment process? And, how are they interacting with us? We've had founders be like downright rude on calls. And I'm like, no, like easy no. And one of the questions that we often ask, it's like just a litmus test question. It doesn't make the decision, but it's part of getting a gut check on something is, would we want to spend the next 10 Thanksgiving dinners with this person? That doesn't mean they're nice. Like Thanksgiving dinner can be a very interesting, polarizing place. I see Zan laughing. He's, oh God, Thanksgiving dinner, here we go. But yeah, it's, interesting topics get brought up, family fights a little bit, like we're good with all of it. But the question is, would we want the person to keep coming back? So that social piece and, being able to, mix and mingle is important. And one of the things I say at 15, 17 is that we've crafted our antenna on collecting social geeks. So it's people who love to geek out about topics with other people. But in that, I love this so much and I want to share way, and not in the look how amazing I am, hyper arrogant, blah, you just can't listen to this person anymore because, there's probably a bit of, some character traits that Christine Peterson had warned me early on about when I first moved to the Bay. But yeah, social intelligence is very important. And one of the things that Michael on my team always says is that, really starting anything, whether it's a startup or nonprofit or project, it's going to test your personal development in big ways. So the things that you don't like to do, you have to do it. Like, because there's nobody else to do it. If you don't like, making cold calls to people or going up to people randomly at conferences, guess what? You're doing a lot of that. Or if you're someone who talks too much and you're like, oh, okay, I gotta pull back a little bit, something like that. You learn this pretty quickly. I used to tell Thiel fellows, reality is the best teacher. And I think in school, we're used to, if you fall off a bike or something, someone's trying to throw a pillow under you and save you. Reality doesn't do that. Reality lets you hit the pavement. And it's harsh, but that's how you really learn. You're like, oh, I'm not touching that hot stove again. So I think it's the same for founders. Is you're going to meet reality a ton. And like how you adapt to that is important.
I agree. Olu, go for it.
Hey, Danielle, in the year and a half of me knowing you, I think it's very clear that you're like mission driven. And I have two short questions off of that. The first is, I'm not going to ask like where your mission came from, but more along the lines of how do you let it make the decisions for the fund and the direction that you are setting? Obviously, you're the founder of the fund. You're doing incredible things, right? With it, but it's very clear you know more of what you're not going to do versus what you're going to do. How do you let this mission drive you towards that? How do you make the decisions based off of that? That's the first question.
Yeah. One is that when we first started the fund, we were very lucky that one of our investors is on the forefront of decision-making theory, and he's been there since the 1970s. So we were pitching him on the fund, and he's, you should take my decision-making course before you like make any investments. Great idea, man. This sounds awesome. And part of that course was all about decision quality. How do you make a good decision based on what you're trying to do and your goals and your aims? And so we developed our diligence checklist based on hey, here's what we really want to do. Here's who we really want to serve. So that when different types of people come to us, it was clear of, okay, this scope of people are within our mission and this scope of people are not. And we have to get good at saying our yeses and nos in that way. And then one of the things that is about decision quality, it's this very Zen mindset of you can have good decision quality with bad outcome, and you can have bad decision quality with a good outcome. And so we try to unlock the decision we made at the time and the outcome. But what we do with the in-between information is roll that back into our process. So it's, that one time we skipped doing a customer discovery call. Turns out like, okay, bad idea. Decision quality should be based on also, getting that done. Or we used to not ask founders what their equity splits were with co-founders. Bad idea. Because guess what? If they're like super uneven, that tends to not work out so well. So now we ask that more often. So yeah, decision quality is really important, and sticking with that mission, especially when we were early on. I remember Michael and I would be like taking a call with someone who was like, I don't know, a PhD doing B2B SaaS. And I think we thought as, okay, we shouldn't say no to any sort of inbound because we're learning, which is true. But at some point you also got to say, okay, B2B SaaS HR with a PhD is not in our scope. If the person had been a dropout or non-degreed, it's okay, cool, let's take that call. But you just have to keep honing your craft. And so we're very specific about that. And for me, it is deeply personal. It's, I had another fund that sort of tried to poach me, lightly away from 1517 a few years ago. And it made me laugh because I was like, I don't want to go be an investor. I want to serve this mission that we have at 1517. So on the team, sometimes we talk about that. Hey, sometimes, I don't know, we'll talk to a team, we'll really love them, and they're like outside of our mission scope. And it's, what do we do in these arenas? It can be tough, but most of the time, unless there's a really good reason to, we just keep coming back to, okay, people without degrees or renegade scientists, that's what we do.
Yeah. Sorry, last question on this super quick. I feel like you don't even think of your 1517 as a fund anymore. No. You just happen to invest into bulks. What do you want to do with it? I think I asked you this last week. I'm going to ask it again because I don't have a clear answer yet.
Yeah.
What do you want to do
it's a good question. Yeah. A couple of years ago when we started our third fund, I was like, hey, because there's this crisis you go through as a fund where you start to grow into becoming an institution. And I have lots of feelings about institutions. And I was like, okay, I don't really like the VC landscape of institutions, and I don't like educational institutions that much. So what we've been saying for a while, and it's a mouthful, is that we are an anti-establishment educational institution. Now, the way we do that happens to be through VC, but VC is the tool. It's the tool that we use, to do our art, if you will. It's not the thing that we're doing, which is really important to us. But we've been thinking about your question a lot, Olu, especially myself and Michael, as 1517 grows, do we want to keep that sort of venture purview? Do we want to become some sort of almost like family office that sort of supports all kinds of different projects in the future? We don't know. And it's something, we're going to raise our fourth fund at the end of this year. I think funds 4, 5, and 6, we're like, okay, cool. I think, assuming we get to 5 and 6, I'm pretty sure we'll get to 4 are locked down. But after that, it does become this question of, what do we want our identity to become? So it's a good question, and I still don't know.
Well, we have to check in with you on that in a few years then. If you do know the name of the course that you mentioned, people in the chat really would love to know, but we can also follow up with you on that if it's not on your tongue right now.
Yes. I'll try to, let's follow up on that. I think the group is called Strategic Decision Thinking, something like that. The guy's name who does it is Carl Spetzer. But after this, let's follow up and I can send some of that info. And I don't know if they've updated how they do these courses, but when I did it 9 years ago, it was like old school 1990s webinar. And I was like, oh God, Carl needs a makeover, but it's really good information.
All right, I'm going to do some digging. Okay, next one up, we have Shruti, then Matteo and Zan, if we get to it. Go for it, Shruti.
Yeah, thanks for explaining really well. I wanted to ask, on a personal level, who was your 1517 when you started off? And
great question.
what how do you financially profit from this and also emotionally feel satisfied and profited from the experience?
So yeah, a big one for us was Peter Thiel. So we worked with him for 5 years at the Thiel Foundation, and Michael and I had a breakfast meeting with him when we were, first setting up 1517. And he's a funny guy. When you have a meeting with Peter, there's no agenda, which is terrifying. You never know, when he's, let's do breakfast, you're like, oh my God, what's he thinking about? So we decided to do the same thing to him. So we went with this 2-pager, and our meeting was actually just to say, mea culpa, we have loved our time at the Thiel Foundation, but it is time for us to move on. And we want to start this venture fund, and we want to get your blessing to do that. But we were going in more, he's going to be mad at us for wanting to leave the foundation. That's what we thought was going to happen. And then what was totally insane in this meeting, we were not going in there thinking, ask for advice, get money, ask for money, get advice, these adages that are actually getting rather dated at this point. In this meeting, Peter was getting really excited about this idea of, expanding what we do. And he said, how much money are you guys going to raise? And I was like, I don't know, thinking about maybe something like 10 million. And, you could see the wheels are turning, and must have waited like 10 seconds or something. He's like, you should raise 15 and I'll be 4 of it. And I was like, what? I smiled so big, I covered my mouth. I felt like I robbed a bank. I wasn't sure if I should let him know how happy I was. I was like, oh my God, what just happened here? But that got us started. And then we went out and we pitched 29 other investors. For our first fund, it came together incredibly fast. And especially those investors who backed us first, we really feel indebted to them, not just financially, but emotionally as well. These people took a chance on us. These are individuals and family offices. These are not big institutions that just have a mandate to throw out gobs of money. They really had to believe in our mission and what we were capable of. And when I look back at it, I'm like, holy moly, we didn't know what we were doing at all. And these people came to the table. So that was really big for us. And I think there was a second part of your question, which I meant to write down and I didn't.
No, it's okay. It's okay. This is great.
Oh, the emotional payback, or the we make money, we keep in business, back to Olu's point here, we don't really feel like a venture fund, but we are a venture fund. We keep in business by making extraordinary returns. One of our companies IPO'd a couple of years ago, so we returned 4x to our investors, which puts us in the top decile of firms. Another one of our companies was acquired last year, which we got another 1x on top of that. And Fund 1 is doing extraordinarily well. So that keeps us in business. On the emotional side, I just love working with people no matter what the outcome of the finances is. The finances are great. I'm in my own home that I bought in the Bay Area. I don't know too many, unmarried women in the Bay who are like, I own my own home. That doesn't really happen. But yeah, so the finance piece is great, if it works out in venture. And the emotional part is great too, because I feel like we're just building this gigantic family at 15, 17. And what's awesome for me, the teacher in me is, wow, we just keep recycling these learnings and these people within the group. So our Fund 1 founders now, some of them support our Fund 3 founders. And, when someone says, hey, I need to talk to somebody about X, we're like, oh, we know that person. Great, make it happen. So I find it incredibly satisfying, on the emotional level of, gosh, this is so great to get to support people no matter what the outcome of the actual company is, because it's a much longer game and you have to be personally invested in the people, I think, to be a very top-notch early stage investor.
Thank you so much. Good answer.
Yeah, I think when our fellows from the first cohort, I think from 7 years ago, start mentoring our new fellow cohort, that's also
exciting.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're family. We're intergenerational. Okay, next one up, we have Matteo.
Yeah, thank you. So I have 2 questions, actually. The first one is, throughout your life, you had a focus on homeschooling, now dropouts, so things that sometimes can be a little bit looked down upon. And I was curious if it's you want to be there for these people that, society doesn't really look at, or if it's more you see that they have something more than people that go through the traditional route. And if so, what is it and where does it come from? The
Sure.
second question is, oh, sorry, you can ask.
No, sorry. I'm just writing down the first one. My memory is,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, shoot, what was that? Yeah, ADHD brain.
Yeah, same.
All
Awful
right,
mem-
so keep going.
The second one is you live this as a mission, right, in your life, it seems. So I wonder how it feels, maybe having a charter school means reaching out to more people, affecting more change in a way. Whereas with 15, 17, you have maybe, I'm not sure, but, focusing on fewer people, but having a bigger impact on those people. So how do you see that balance? And,
Sure. So let's see. Yeah, scale of impact is important. I guess I see the scale of impact in a couple ways. With Fund 3, for example, we'll back 100 companies. That's a couple co-founders each usually. And then we have the ability to do up to 200 grants a year. We don't always hit that number, just, bandwidth on giving out grants. And then we have a community of 5,000 people that we've built over time as well. And what we were talking about earlier, it all rolls into each other over time and keeps having these positive social ROI as a group. So that is really important. And then because people are working on things that are like very predominantly technologically interesting, that's where I think we hit actual scale on, hey, you know what? If Power can get out there, and make energy abundant, or Olu starts doing manufacturing in space, wow, that's huge. That affects a lot of people. For me, that scale is inherent to the type of work we do. But this is also why I'm still on the board of my charter school and things like that. And we're thinking about, hey, can we take what we're doing at Innovations Academy and, scale that up in other ways in the future? And I already lost track of your first question.
it was about whether you see something special in people that, are homeschooled dropouts.
Yeah. I don't even know how to define it. One of the things we've been talking about at 15, 17 is I think there is something special about people who take a different path than other people. Like it takes a certain amount of chutzpah or courage to get out there and do that. So that is, that is something that is near and dear. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would add to that. Yeah, if someone's taking a personal risk to do what they're doing, maybe more so than, like a general risk within a population, that to us is just really interesting. So I'll try to leave it at that because I know we only have 2 minutes and one more question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Zan, take it away.
I've been noticing recently that a lot of what's done in venture is on the 10-year span, as you mentioned. Do you see any possibility in the future of it spanning towards longer term goals?
Yeah.
That might not offer returns like 10, 20, 30.
Sure. Yeah, I do. One thing, it's waxed and waned over time, but I did for a period of time see family offices start getting into deep tech investing. And as a family office, what's really interesting about family offices is they're thinking about deep legacy. It's like family offices that were in oil are like, all right, energy. That is the meta space that we've been in forever. And we have a lot of knowledge there. And how do we do this in different ways going forward? What is that going to look like? So I think family offices are an interesting place for that longevity piece to happen. But I also think funds that focus on having individuals and family offices as their investors also have that opportunity because you can set, as a fund, you can set different expectations. I don't know if with Fund, for example, since we've done quite a bit now in, like a deep tech arena, maybe we want to try to, talk to our LPs first about, hey, would y'all be game for, I don't know. I'm all about scaffolding up instead of being like, asking for something huge and then maybe missing the mark, but being like, hey, can we get to 12 years? Can we get to 15 years? Or there might be things in the future where, maybe we have our main fund, but we also have other funds that are more sector specific, where here's the 20-year super deep tech R&D crazy shit fund, for lack of a better term, that some of our investors would be very interested in. And, one thing that we've also found with the family offices is a lot of time there's an educational component of, the matriarch and the patriarch are older, but they have adult children who will want to learn about deep tech in all these spaces and would be game for a 20-year journey. on something because they are looking for returns, but they're also looking for something else like education in specific areas.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love it. I'm excited for the crazy.
Yeah, me too. Crazy 1517 Crazy Shit Fund LP. That'll be the new name of it.
I have to claim the URL as it's still available. Thank you so much, Danielle. This was really fun. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks all for your great questions. And Danielle just popped her email in the chat as well.
Email in the chat if anyone wants to get in touch. I love hearing from people. And yeah, adios, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.